Hello, everybody. I took a bunch of time lapse the last week of all of my progress on the Pietenpol build, so I'll just do a voiceover for this week's update. Anyways, I got a piece of MDF here that I'm laying out the full-size plans for the elevator on. Um, a lot of measuring, a lot of making sure that everything's square, um, and sharpening pencils a lot. So, or actually just adding lead to them. Yeah, so the plan, the way I drew it out, turned out fairly well. As you'll see later on in the video, I'll explain kind of where I goofed up. But I'm gonna end up needing to redraw this out on the other side. Basically, make a jig, another plan, and then make the jig. But yeah, so far I was pretty happy with how this turned out. I took my time. It took me about 3 or 4 hours to get this all done. But yeah, so then I headed down to the shop, did some cleanup work, found some wood laying around that I could use. Just putting all this different odds and ends away and taking the trash out and stuff like that. So, yeah, we get that all put away, cleared the deck, and then pull out the router table to find out that the holes don't match up. And then I kind of throw that off to the side and start thinking about how I'm going to do another router table, how I'm going to build one. Then I take apart this pallet, which is really nice pine, really straight, it's really good quality pine from a pallet that I use, that I end up using later for prototyping some of the pieces. And here you say I've figured out what I'm going to do for my router table, and I start cutting the pieces. Then tack them all up, make sure they're all square, and then tack them all up here. Then go through it on the table saw, make sure that that it'll fit. That's the right dimensions and everything. Then I bring it back over and then finish just welding it all up. So here I've got that piece of plywood that I cut on the table saw. That'll end up being the actual table part of the router table. And then I'm just marking where I want to drill holes for my screws to mount it to the frame here. And then I cut the hole, but it was too small, so I just decided to open it up a little bit with the router, or with the files. And then I start drilling the holes and countersinking. I'm going to end up using just self-tapping screws to mount it to that metal frame. So once she goes down, then I start working on I'm going to mount the router to the piece of wood and start thinking about my fence there. So I drill the holes, put the router up there, screw it all down, and then I end up just running it through with the router on to just make sure that the wood is clear away from the blade. And then this is me just making the fence. Doesn't have to look pretty, it just needs to run one piece of wood through it pretty much. So I'm not wanting to I don't need to spend a whole lot of money and make it real elaborate. I just needed to get the job done this one time. But it actually turned out a lot better than I initially thought when I started building this. It took me a couple tries, and you'll see I have to add a piece of wood to the face of it to get the router to cut the way I want it. But I'm just making a dust collection thing here, so it'll just suck up all the shavings right into the vacuum. That way it doesn't go all over the place and make a huge mess. And then here I'm using that used pallet wood that I pounded all the nails out of to make my first pieces of the different profiles I need for the tail section. So just using all the different pieces of wood off the pallet, making my leading edge and main beam and and then the center beam, and then a little bit of cap strip to finish it off. And then here I take that wood up to my table or my jig and start laying it out and figuring out how I'm going to do it. I decided to put little blocks on it to make a jig, just screwing them down until the glue dries, just to hold them in place, which worked out pretty well for this time that I was building this kind of half of the elevator. So I finished getting all those down, then I lay up all the different pieces. I put them a little too close together, so I had to chisel out a little bit of wood there to make them fit in the blocks. And then just making things all straight and true as best I can. So I got the cap strip here, then I put the end on, and then you'll see me start to work on the gussets to hold it all together. I totally forgot to glue all the butt joints together, so there's a learning experience. Thankfully it was pine, not spruce. So just cutting out the little pieces where the gussets are going to be, so they lay flat on the pieces of wood. And then this one was kind of interesting, so I'm still kind of figuring out how I'm going to do that on the horizontal stabilizer with that cross brace, and how I'm going to mount that and gusset it together. Yeah, I just used a triangle gusset on this corner of the tail or the elevator, which actually turned out pretty well. I might end up doing that on the official one that's going on the airplane, but we'll see. So I nail it all together, wake up my dad in the process. So I gotta take it down to the basement and finish pounding in the other side with nails. And then here I'm just doing some more wood processing, milling down a 2x4 down to 1 inch to make the main beams out of. So switch out to the dado blade, set it all up, run it through the dado blade, 3 runs each side of the wood, basically make an I-beam. And then you'll see me change out the blade to the just straight cut blade, and then just cut that I-beam in half, creating my 2 main beam pieces. And then figuring out how I'm going to make my leading edge. So it takes me about, on the 3rd try, I get it kind of close to what I want. So I think this is my 2nd try. And I get it pretty close, but then I decide that's not exactly how I want it, so you'll see me redo it and on the other part of that board. So here I go, just setting it up to have the angle to come down to a point on the trailing edge. So I rip it all the way through, and yes, it is terrifying working with a table saw with these small pieces of wood, but that's why we have push sticks, and it's probably a good thing that I'm actually terrified of it. So yeah, just finishing setting it up, run it through with the dado blade, it looks like. Yeah, run it through with the dado blade, and then put the straight one on and then rip it. And this is my final cut for the trailing edge, set it off to the side, and then I think we start making cap strip here, which is probably the most terrifying because it's cap strip's only half by 3/16, I believe. So yeah, a lot of push sticks, sacrificial push sticks. Cutting out more blocks to finish up the second half of the jig. See here, cleaning up the jig so I can lay them out, figure out where I'm going to put them, then glue and screw them down. Yeah, just glue them and screw them down, and then I'll start laying up the pieces I just cut in the jig, trying to make a full-size elevator this time, not just half. And what I ended up doing is all the blocks didn't line up straight, so that's why I'm going to have to end up flipping it over, redrawing it out, and then I'm going to make the jig. But when I do, I'm going to use like a cut guide to make the line straight. So anyways, that's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed it, and I think I'll do one more update before I go on vacation. but then I'll probably won't be uploading for a couple weeks. So hope you enjoyed that, and we'll talk to you later.